I'm Mr. Mig. Welcome to my classroom. Today we're going to talk about needs and wants and setting priorities. I teach personal finance at a high school, and the reason this topic is so important is because this is where people usually mess up and puts them in a lot of trouble. When you don't get your needs and wants straight, when you don't set your priorities straight, this is how you end up in credit card debt. This is how you end up in a vicious cycle of never being able to catch up, of always going to paycheck to paycheck. And this is what often ends up to people ending up living under the bridge, living on the street. You don't want to end up like that. You don't want to be there. And in order to avoid that, you gotta know what your needs are versus your wants. You gotta be able to set your priorities. Otherwise, you're gonna be one of the many Americans who is just drowning in credit card debt. The average American has $16,000 of credit card debt. A lot of that is due to not knowing their needs versus their wants. So the first thing with needs, what we got to understand is they're individual. It's going to depend on you. I can't tell you what your needs are. Your situation is different than mine. So you got to realize, hey, what are my needs? Also, I got a list here, but we got to understand ours and be realistic about them. So a lot of times when I talk about high school students, they might say things to me like, well, is a house really a need? Is electricity really a need? Humans have existed for thousands of years before we had electricity, running water, homes, before we had cars. Are those things really needs? Here's the thing. Think of it as what is needed to live the lifestyle that you are currently living or that you want to be able to comfortably live in. What is needed for that? Don't think of, well, I could survive without a house and a car. You could. Humans have before, but what do you need for your current lifestyle? So here I put on the top of these needs lists, I have rent, food, utilities, emergency savings. Those I think are pretty universal. Everyone's going to need those for sure. Then underneath that, I have a blue line with my insurance, cell phone, and car/transportation. I'll start with car because unless you live in DC, New York, LA, maybe Chicago, you're going to need a car, right? If you live anywhere in between there, if you live in rural America like I do, a car is a need. I drive 30 minutes to work every day. I couldn't walk. It's not possible. I need to have a car. It's a necessity for me. Even if you live in New York, LA, or New York, San Francisco, one of those cities, you still need some sort of transportation, probably paying for the metro. So transportation still needs to be part of your budget, even if you live in a mega city like that. Also, cell phone, is that a need? I would say it is. You need to be able to communicate, but again, that's going to depend on you. And then insurance, that's going to depend on your situation as well. If you're still in college, you might not need it. Maybe your parents are paying for it. Maybe they're taking care of your insurance, so it's going to depend on you. If you're an adult and on your own, you're probably going to need health insurance, car insurance, life insurance. Maybe your company, your employer takes care of those, maybe not. Also, on top of it, it's not just recognizing our needs, but how much we should be spending on each of them. So yes, food is a need, no question. But you need to go have a steak dinner every night. You got to set the amount that you need to spend for yourself. Normally, I like to put about $500 a month here for myself. I spend on food, 5 to 6, depending on the month. I'm a single person, I live alone. That works for me. If you have a family, that's obviously going to be a lot higher. Rent is pretty universal. We like to say about 30%. Again, if you live in LA, you live in San Francisco, you live in New York, it might actually end up being more because those cities are so expensive. If you live where I live, 30% is pretty reasonable. We don't want to spend more than 30% of our gross, so our pre-tax income, on rent or housing. So if you make about $4,000 a month, that'd be about $1,200 that you're spending on your rent. And again, you want to prioritize each of these. This one is a huge one, emergency savings. You need to have an emergency savings plan. Because if you have nothing in savings, if you're one of the 41% of Americans who has less than $500 in their savings account, that's when you end up in big trouble. That's when you have your car has to get worked on, right? The tire blows or your radiator's leaking or something happens and you don't have money to fix it. Now you're out of a car, now you can't get to work. Or you have to go to the hospital and you got a hospital bill and you can't pay it. Things are going to happen. Life happens, folks. It's going to happen to everybody. Things will happen to you, unexpected things, and it will always happen at the worst time. That's why you need to have an emergency savings. Figure out how much you can put in here each month, but realistically, you want to have 6 months worth at any given time. So you want 6 months of emergency savings. And obviously, if you're younger, you're going to take time to accumulate that. If you have nothing right now, it'll take you time to get there, but eventually that is your goal, is to get to 6 months. Now, once we get our needs straight and we figure out how much we're spending on each of these, and in another video, I'll do a budget for you. I'll show you how to use an Excel spreadsheet. But once we get these all straightened out, that's when we can go to our wants. But we don't want to start spending here before we get these taken care of. Pay these off first. Otherwise, once you start buying the things you don't need, if you get the skateboard, if you get the milkshake every day, if you get the coffee every day before work, before you're taking care of these things, that's when at the end of the month, you can't pay your rent, or you can't pay your cell phone bill, or you can't pay the car bill, and then you pull out the credit card and you start putting things on the credit card. And that's how you get behind. And once you get on that cycle, it is impossible to get off. It's not impossible. It's hard to get off of it. That's how people end up with an average of $16,000 worth of credit card debt. Again, I'll talk about that in a later video. I thank you for watching Mr. Big's Classroom.